Can you hear the ocean breeze? The sun beaming down on you, getting a nice tan, looking out at that blue Mediterranean Ocean. That is one of my favorite things in life, and I want to start out by saying that tonight's movie review is very special to me. This is probably the most excited I've ever been to review a film. It's going to be a two-parter because I just have so much to say about it, especially with the historical stuff. So part two will be a lot of history. So if you love this movie as much as me, you'll definitely want to watch part two because part two is very interesting. And there's not a whole lot on this movie online, so definitely watch out for that. I want to dedicate these reviews, I should say, the two videos to someone very special to me. So I'll just leave it at that. She's been very sick lately, but she's getting better little by little. So tonight's movie review is of Pandora and the Flying Dutchman, and it came out in 1951. It was a British production, but it was released in America through MGM. In fact, the director, Albert Lewin, who is honestly one of my favorite directors of all time, he worked with MGM, but this movie was a little too artsy for MGM's taste, so he went off to England to make this film with a British production, and he was loaned out the most beautiful actress from back in the day, which is Ava Gardner. In fact, I don't think I've ever done a review of Ava Gardner in my channel yet. I guess I've just always been looking for a special one to do, and this certainly is one. I'll just start out by saying, obviously, if I'm this much in love with the movie, then it's going to be a 4 stars out of 4 stars. We don't really need to focus on review stars. We'll just focus on the nighttime stars for this movie. I also want to say that in this review, I didn't write too much down in notes because I sort of want to wing this a little more. I don't want to be looking down at a piece of paper a lot for this review because it's just such a magical film. As I said, released in 1951, it stars, as I said, Ava Gardner, the most beautiful woman, James Mason, who, honestly, I will start out by saying one of the first movies I ever saw James Mason in was Lolita, and that movie kind of ruined him for me because I always see him as like this sort of pedophile guy. But if you're able to get past that with this movie, honestly, because James Mason is very charming in this film. It's much earlier than that. He's very handsome in it. He fits the role perfectly. He plays the Flying Dutchman in this film. We'll get to the plot in a little bit. This also stars British actor Nigel Patrick, sort of your typical sportsman British guy in this film. I'll just start out by saying apparently he wasn't too pleasant to work with on the set because he sort of had this air about him that British actors are better, and also Albert Lewin, the director, was American, and he was sort of a jerk apparently to work with, which is surprising because James Mason, he's also British, but apparently he was sort of casted out of British film at this point in his career. But anyway, I'm digressing into history too much now. And it also stars Harold Warrender, who plays Jeffrey, which I'll say Jeffrey is sort of the Nick from The Great Gatsby character. He's observing everything that's going on in the story, sort of third perspective, and he's telling us the story of Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. So he's sort of like that type of character where he's watching everything and he's telling us. He's this old archaeologist. Great character, great actor. And also Mario Cabré, I should say, and he plays the matador in this film, which is a bullfighter. He's a Spanish bullfighter, and interestingly enough, he really was a bullfighter in real life. He knew no English. He memorized his lines. That's all. He didn't know what he was saying. He just memorized his lines, no English at all. and he's the romantic Spaniard, Espanol. And I will also start out by saying I myself am Spanish. My family comes from Barcelona, so that's another reason why I love this movie so much, because it takes place in España, in Spain. So I guess my romantic Spanish side just comes out so much when I watch this movie, and just my love for the Mediterranean in general. For anyone who's never been there, I highly recommend you go. So I'll start out by saying that this is one of those movies where it's just, this is what will keep you going back to the old films, just looking for more amazing pictures like this. Let me start out by saying a quote from the movie, which is, "The measure of love is what one is willing to give up for it." And that's sort of a theme throughout the entire movie, which I will also say Albert Lewin, the director, also wrote the story. Obviously, The Flying Dutchman is an old sea tale, but he wrote the story, and Jack Cardiff, a famous cinematographer, filmed this. He also did Under Capricorn, a Hitchcock film. He also did a lot of other Technicolor films, but the Technicolor in this movie is just astonishing. It's honestly one of the best Technicolor movies I've ever seen, if not the best. So this film was made, or I shouldn't say made, but a lot of it was filmed in Spain, on Costa Brava, which is sort of that coast where Barcelona is. It's very near Barcelona. It was filmed in Tossa de Mar, which is not far from Barcelona. And Tossa de Mar was just a stunning set. I mean, you will just get lost in this film, because just from the start, talking about the setting, it doesn't get better than the setting, honestly. It's filmed from up in a castle, like an old Castilian castle or something like that, and it's just beautiful because you see from up in this castle and so many different views. You see the ocean, always the Mediterranean, and you see the beach, and it's sort of sad to think that most likely now it's all filled with tourism and resorts and hotels, because in this it was all just a beautiful beach. The fishermen are seen going out, and anyway, doesn't get better than this set. And let's see. So I'll start out by talking about the plot. So The Flying Dutchman, it's a tale where this Dutchman, way back in the day, in fact, there's a flashback scene that explains the tale. Way back in the day, this Dutchman, I guess he's an aristocrat, he murders his wife because he believes that she has been cheating on him with countless men, just cheating on him. And his wife obviously looks just like Ava Gardner. And he kills her because he thinks she's cheating. And in reality, he has a dream. He wakes up on his ship and he realizes, oh my gosh, my wife was faithful to me. So he murders with a knife his beautiful wife for no reason. So he is cursed to roam the seas on his ship, and for eternity, for his sin. And I think every 7 or 8 years he's allowed to take the form of a human, and he goes to a coast where he hopes to find a love, un amor, who will die for him, to make the ultimate sacrifice, which goes back to that quote, the measure of love is what one is willing to give up for it. So what's the ultimate sacrifice? Well, it's someone's life. So the Flying Dutchman, as I said, is James Mason, who comes in the disguise as Hendrik van der Zee, which van der Zee I think means something along the lines of the sea, interestingly enough. So he plays Hendrik, and he comes to this beautiful Spanish coast and on his yacht, and that sort of takes us to Ava Gardner's character Pandora, who also relates to the Pandora's box and all of that mythology, but I won't go into that in this video. So Pandora is just this femme fatale. Essentially, every man who sees her just falls madly in love with her, who they just can't shake her from their brain, which I don't blame them. If I saw Ava Gardner in those beautiful colorful clothes around me, I would probably do the same thing. So it starts out with her in a beautiful Spanish how do you say, a bar where people are having tapas and cerveza and beer. And one thing that please note is that the director filmed an entire flamenco scene with guitars and real flamenco dancers, and he let them dance the whole thing out, which was spectacular. If you've ever been to southern Spain, especially Granada, you'll see that a lot. So I just love the fact that Albert Lewin allowed them to do a full performance for this movie. So anyway, we see a man essentially die. He's so obsessed with Pandora, he essentially dies because she keeps denying marriage, and he just doesn't want to live life without her. Anyway, so then we also have Nigel Patrick's character, he's this race car driver. He's trying to break the record for driving the fastest car on earth or something along those lines. And they go for a drive at nighttime on the coast, and he essentially stops. They come to a stop, and he asks Pandora, will you marry me? And she says, well, what are you willing to give up for me? So it goes back to the measure of love is what one is willing to give up. So she says, and honestly, Pandora is sort of a brat in this movie, a huge brat who just gets anything she ever wants, especially at the start of the movie. She's very impulsive. So she tells him, will you push your beloved race car off this cliff into the sea for my love to marry? So he does it. An amazing scene. And so then she agrees to marry him. Now then she sees this yacht, this strange yacht on the Mediterranean, and she's just in a trance, wondering. It's magical. It's magical realism. In fact, I'll note that this movie is very similar to a movie such as what's the name? Portrait of Jenny. It's very similar to that magical realism. So she's looking out, and she sees this yacht, and she strips naked, and she goes out and swims at nighttime to this yacht, and she basically discovers James Mason, the Dutchman, Hendrik, and instantly she has just this what's the word I'm looking for, supernatural love connection with the Dutchman. And basically, I'm not going to go into the entire story. Obviously, I never do, because I don't like to give everything away, especially for those who haven't seen it. So basically, once she's made contact with him, Jeffrey, the Nick character, is watching their interactions. We see that Hendrik, the Dutchman, has eternal life, because eventually Mario Cabré's character, the Matador, the bullfighter, comes into the picture, and he is so jealous. He's a crazy, jealous Spaniard. He tries to kill James Mason, the Dutchman, but he comes back to life. And there's this amazing bullfighting scene where he's really doing his own stunts. He's bullfighting in this, and he sees Hendrik walk in, and sit down, and he freaks out because he says, I killed him, no es posible, it's not, it can't be. And very dramatic in Spanish fashion, I should say. So it basically revolves around, will Pandora give the ultimate sacrifice to the Dutchman, which would be her life, for her love for him, because his spell will never be broken until some woman has made that ultimate sacrifice for him. And that's essentially the plot of the movie. I'm not going to give away the ending, but as I said, this movie sort of takes me out of reality and into just a totally different world. I've never reviewed a film like this in my channel that is just beyond words for me. So I was excited to review this tonight, but I was also a little bit nervous because I really want to do this movie justice. So please watch part 2, because that's where I go into so much amazing history behind this film. There's a lot of interesting stories, especially with Ava Gardner. I have her autobiography I'm going to read from, where she talks about Frank Sinatra and Mario, the bullfighter, and this huge affair. So there's so much interesting stuff to watch in that. But if you don't, please at least watch this movie, because it's just incredible. Albert Lewin, I didn't mention earlier, but he also did The Picture of Dorian Gray, and also The Moon and Sixpence, which are two other incredible films, also perfect films that I want to review eventually, but I really want books to dive into that, and I do have books for this film. So with that, I will say thanks for watching this review, and please continue into the next one if you want to hear some great stories. Ava and James, this movie is just incredible. I just don't have many words. Thank you for watching.